Now I want to do one more example of Rolle's theorem because you know how much I like my trig. So I want to do one where we're actually looking at some trig. So f of x is equal to the cosine of 4x here at pi over 8 to 3 pi over 8. That's an 8. Contrary to what it may look like, that's an 8. All right? Okay, as soon as it says Rolle's theorem, what's the very first thing you have to do? Yes, 3 criteria. Number 1, continuous. Number 2, differentiable. Number 3, does f of a equal f of b? And if you write those down on your paper every single time, then you'll help to remember them. So instead of just doing your homework without actually working it out, it will make an impact. If you write it on your paper, then that helps it stick. So whenever you have to recall it later, you can. All right, is this cosine function continuous? Yeah, it's not divided by anything, and we know cosine's continuous. This is just telling me that my amplitude is changing. We're good. Or not my amplitude, my period is changing. So we're good with that. So yes, cosine is continuous function. So therefore, is it differentiable? Yes, because it's cosine, right? I know that if I'm looking at cosine, it's just bouncing back and forth. The only thing that matters is it a wide bounce? Is it a real narrow bounce? Which this one is narrow because we know of this, right? But that's the point. Now, I'm going to plug in f of pi over 8 and see what that's going to give me. The cosine of 4 times pi over 8 is equivalent to the cosine of pi over 2. What's a cosine of pi over 2? 0. So f of pi over 8 is equal to 0. Now, this one is equal to 0, and the last example we did was 0. That's just a coincidence. They don't have to equal 0. I didn't realize that this one did, but it works out. The cosine of 4 times 3 pi over 8. So I'm looking at the cosine of 3 pi over 2. Yep, so if I'm looking at my graph, that's down here. And what's that? Again with the 0. The whole thing is not that they equal 0, but that they're equal to each other. They happen to equal 0, which is fine, but the whole thing is making sure they're equal to each other. Okay, so now I'm going to take my derivative and set that equal to 0. So f prime of x, this is going to be chain rule, right? So the derivative of the outside is going to be negative sine, keep the guts, then multiply by the derivative of the inside. And so remember, it is good practice when you have a value of my angle and I'm multiplying it out here by 4. Instead of putting it at 4, it's a coefficient. Just stick that in front. 98% of success in mathematics is what? That's right, organization. If you've learned nothing else, we've learned that, right? Awesome. So here I am, just put that negative 4 in front. This is an angle. You cannot multiply that 4 by the angle. It has to be thrown up here in front. Okay, so set this equal to 0. Negative 4 sine of 4x, divide both sides by negative 4. Scoot this up a little bit here. 0 is equal to the sine of 4x. Now here's the question. I am bound by the interval here of pi over 8. And remember, it's open. We talked about that last time. Bound by the interval of pi over 8 to 3 pi over 8. And I want to say what is in there. Where is sine going to give me a 0? Yes. Over here at 0 because my point's 1, 0. And back here at pi because my point is negative 1, 0. So my question to you is, what value of x do I plug in to pull that off? I could plug in a 0 for that value of x, but is 0 going to fit in my interval? No. Do you see that? Not in the interval. If 0, so let me put a 0. 0 is not in the interval, so I can't use 0 in this instance. So my question to you is, what value of x do I use in order to get a pi out of this deal? Like, what can I plug in for x so that I'm looking at the sign of pi? Yeah, so it's trickster, right? So I'm going to use pi over 4 because 4 times pi over 4 is equal to pi. Do you see that? Right, so my ultimate goal is to say, when is the sine of 4x going to give me the output of 0? What value of x is going to work for that? Pi over 4. Because whenever I plug in pi over 4, right, those 4's cancel, and I'm just finding the sine of pi, which we know to be 0. So x in this instance is pi over 4, and guess what? Pi over 4 is in my interval, so we're good to go. Not bad, right? Yeah. So just look at those values. You know I love throwing some trig in there. I want to keep it fresh for you. All right. Good job, guys.